I'm author Mark Muncy,
And I'm author Erika Lance.
and this is Eerie Travels.
You might listen to this podcast and hear us say Eerie Adventure, but due to a 1937 copyright issue, our podcast is actually named Eerie Travels. So just insert that whenever you hear Eerie Adventure because, oops, that never happened.
Greetings, travelers. We're back.
Yes. No, it's adventurers. Adventurers.
Well, greeting adventurers. Yes. Greetings, adventurers. Yes. So we are back. We're here. But should we be? That's the question. So
I would like to say yes. I would like to say yes.
Yes. And I, as always, am your eclectic host, author Mark Muncy of the Erie, Florida book series and Erie, Appalachia, amongst others. So yes, I do know how to use other adjectives because I also have Freaky Florida and Creepy Florida. So and
we're gonna come up with a sum up way now that you're Erie, Appalachia too. You can't just say Erie, Florida because
no, that's why we say Erie Travels now. But and then we're Erie Adventure now.
We are Erie Adventure, which is part of Erie Travels, which is part of Erie, Florida. It's a landslide of Erie.
It has been snowballing for years, and not to be confused with Cocaine Bear snowballing, but from our last episode, but we're building into this landslide of craziness and high strangeness, and it is a joy. It is a joy to dive into these things with my amazing co-host, the lovely
Erika. I like that you say lovely. We're going to come up with some new adjectives for this too. Adverbs. No, that's not correct. I know English. I am Erika Lance. I am also an author of horror stories that don't have happy endings. Super proud of that. And I'm also the host of the Drinking with Authors podcast, along with this podcast. So Mark co-hosts with me there if you ever want to, listen to me talk for hours with alcohol. Yes.
Yeah,
I do.
Yeah. It's pretty fun. I'm usually the designated driver on that one because I can't have all the fun alcoholic stuff because of my epilepsy meds. So it's pretty fun.
I know it's okay. I think the epilepsy meds might be more cool than the alcohol, depending on
the day. Yeah, depending on the day. Yeah, definitely. So, but oh my gosh. So since the last time we spoke, we've gone down.
Wait! You keep forgetting. This is episode 2, and you have to introduce our amazing producer, Callie, because they are what creates how we do what we do.
Yes, they do all the work behind. They don't matter. They do all the stuff behind the scenes. Don't you understand?
They kind of matter. Like we kind of won't have a podcast. So to Callie,
suddenly if we know Callie's been involved. So the great Calista Muncy, the power behind the scenes, pushing all the buttons, pulling all the levers, making the internet go.
Yes. We cannot survive without them. And
yes. Okay.
Now there's breaking news. What is this breaking news?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So this is going to happen occasionally on the podcast. This is episode 2, and we have something major hit the news literally as we went to press. That had to be brought up. So this wonderful company is doing 3D printer, they were doing like a show of 3D printed things and trying to show the latest things in 3D printing. And Cinratech is the name of the company. And they hosted this, let's figure these things out. And so this wonderful German designer and architect, his name's Stefan Heinrich, a perfect German name. He decides to create a fully 3D printed shoe, and you can buy the pattern for this shoe. And now, what is this shoe, right? Well,
I was going to say, why? I mean, it's badass that there's a 3D printed shoe because most of what I've seen is printed with resin or plastic, so not a shoe-like material. But I'm assuming if you're bringing it up, it has more to do with something creepy.
It's a little weird, and the name of it is what drew me to this news because as it came out, it is made with the Cinratech flexible TPE material, which is the new 3D printed material they're using. They've used it a lot for artificial limbs and stuff like that, because it's it's a lot better than resin and all the other stuff that 3D printers normally do. But the plus thing is this thing, the shoe, he's named it after cryptids, which are near and dear to my heart, as you know.
Ooh,
So it is
what
called
cryptid?
the Cryptide. And it is an open design sole that you pretty much just want to wear a sock with it. You don't really want to wear like a heavy shoe with this. But it's basically a sneaker bottom, right? And it kind of goes over the toe. And what it does is it lets you leave footprints like a Bigfoot.
Oh my God, we need these shoes now.
Yes.
We need a listener with a 3D printer that will do this to buy this and make us shoes.
Yes, and it sounds silly. People think of 3D printed things, and they keep getting more and more advanced every day. This is just such a cool material, and it varies the thickness in places so that it curves and it bends. It's very ergonomic looking. It looks comfortable as heck. There is a video on YouTube, and we will link that in the show notes. You'll be able to find that at erieadventure.com. But you'll also be able to see the picture of this thing. This thing is crazy, and I recommend everybody in the future will be wearing this. I just know it.
I think that we need them desperately. So if you are a listener and you have a 3D printer that will allow this, reach out to us, because I think every place we go to explore, we need to be wearing these shoes just to completely fuck up the entire system there.
As a man who goes out with Bigfoot hunting teams and UFO hunting teams and all that, I can see where this is going to screw some things up eventually. One of the most recent things we did while we were up north was there were some animal attacks, and I went out to this rural area of Ohio where 2 dogs have been killed, and then about a week later a horse was killed in its barn, and the headline said non-human creature kills horse. So I'm like, oh, I have to go see this. And when the sheriff says non-human creature, what the heck? And when we got out there,
let me just clarify: any non-human creature is like an animal.
Animal, exactly. But the headlines read like that. You can't; those stand out to me, of course.
Of course.
As the Erie Appalachia guy, I start getting all those fun headlines. Did you know about this one, Mark? Yes, I did. But I went out there to talk to the families and to see some things. And we went out there and there was a Bigfoot hunting team that went out.
Okay.
And they found some tracks. And one of them looked very, very weird. And what it was, though, after casting it, we were able to figure it out. Now, if someone looking at it on the ground would go, "Oh, Bigfoot." But what it really was a double bear track, where a bear stepped in its own track, and it kind of made this double footprint. So it looks like a giant footprint, but it's just a double bear. And when you cast it, you can actually see the details where the first paw is on top of the second. So that's what
Are
gets a lot.
Are you sure they're not 2 bears and they walk single file to hide their numbers?
That it could be possible. I
My Star Wars reference of this show.
That works. The force is strong with you. But we what's funny is a lot of the Bigfoot prints back in the day, back in the Pacific Northwest, when Bigfoot was, before it it popped again, with the Patterson Gimlin film, and then of course In Search of and all that. Back in the day, there was a man on his deathbed said that he started it all. Was that he had followed the wild man stories growing up with them, because it was basically native lore up there, just part of their native traditions, and he decided to make a shoe that would leave these giant monster prints. And he, on his deathbed, said that he had done it all over up near Oregon and Washington State. And the scientists, were studying these. It was like, no human could leave these footprints. What he had done was he had put them on backwards. So when you would walk heel to toe, the footprint would look a little different. So the pressure was more on the toe, so it looked really weird on those footprints, the way he wore them. So most people would think you'd wear the footprint like the Bigfoot print, like these shoes. But that was one of the things that when people went, oh, wait a minute, this guy might be onto something, because that was, some of those footprints were very hard to describe. So now the problem is that muddies the water. Were these big footprints, what about the real ones? Or what about the ones that people have studied? Are there more hoaxers like him? And that's, and that throws the whole, why it's still pseudoscience and not science, and that's.
Well, yeah, I mean, I of course there's probably hoaxers and stuff like that, and we'll talk about those on other episodes and stuff like that. But I think that, there's also some legitimate documentation, for lack of a better way of putting it, that says there is something out there of this similar ilk. I mean, there, between the sightings and coming across different furs and things like that, I think it's interesting. And the Bigfoot has been talked about, and this is not a Bigfoot
episode. This isn't even a Bigfoot episode. Yeah.
You brought it up. Someone would say Bigfoot has been talked about since before that person probably existed.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. And then
so I'm gonna say that he did not help.
No, he certainly didn't. He muddied the waters, which they're always muddy when you go into these things, just like ghosts, just like the hoaxers, all that. So yeah, it's crazy. So anyway, those will be discussed in future days. We'll be talking hoaxers, we'll be talking the real stuff. We have plenty of skunk ape and Bigfoot footage to discuss. But that is for another day.
Yes.
Now, this year was my first time in 20 years going to Dragon Con.
Okay. Wow. Yes. Yeah. I've been many times. I love Dragon Con.
You love Dragon Con. We love Dragon Con, right?
We love Dragon Con.
So I'm going to take you back in time to Dragon Con 2010. Okay. And there is this wonderful writer in Dragon Con 2010. And she is there, and she hears the news about Nelson Mandela's death. And
wait a minute, how far back in time are we going?
2010.
Okay.
But she had heard this, his death was, hold on, we will pull up our notes here, right? Because we got to Wikipedia this. So when did he die? Do you have the notes?
Oh, I'm gonna look. I'm looking. He died. Let's see. Hold on. Nope. Nelson. Oh God.
Sally, you're gonna earn your money on this one, because we gotta.
Okay, December 5th, 2013 is actually when he died.
Right? Yep. So 2013, 2010, she sees this notice that he's gonna be speaking at this thing. And she was convinced he had died in 1999 in prison. And she recalls that there were all these funerals for him, and this big, his widow had given this big impassioned speech, and all this other stuff about him, and how the world leaders came to his funeral, and all this amazing things. And now, so she's convinced, what this, I saw this, how can he be speaking, how can he still be doing this stuff? And so she begins to talk to other people there at a panel, saying, does anybody else remember this? Because I saw he's going to be talking. And they're all like, no, this, he's still alive. But then there were some people like, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember this, his death. So this became the discussion of what would become known as the Mandela Effect, where people remember certain things happening that didn't happen, that remember certain things being a certain way. And it's kind of this all-encompassing umbrella of strange and unusual, where we thought something happened and it didn't. and we thought something weird went a different way. It was most recently with the death of Pele, which just happened, and early in 2023. And some people were convinced he died 10 years ago and remembered his funeral. But no, he had his nationwide funeral, early this year. So
Wow.
what is the premise?
Well, it's interesting because they call it the Mandela Effect, right? But it's something that's also, like, in the past kind of been called the like a false memory of things,
100%.
right? But what's interesting is when you get a group of people that has a false memory. So, like, one of the reasons, believe it or not, eyewitness quote unquote testimony is, and here's Erika going down the crime route.
Yes.
But eyewitness testimony sometimes is not used when there's more than one person, because people, and they've done like all these experiments on this kind of thing, will remember different things. Every person's perspective can be ridiculously different on things. And like there was one of the Mandela effects, like the biggest one known is like the Bernstein Bears, right?
Yes.
Right.
So
and it's whether or not it was Bernstein or
Berenstain or Berenstein. Yeah, because it's Berenstain Bears, but people remember it as Berenstein Bears. And people thought, oh, it was changed because of implications of a religious background. So it was changed to be, the people who made it weren't the Berenstains. Yeah, or weren't the Berensteins, it became the Berenstains. And of course, no, it was always the Berenstains. And but people remember 100% it was Berenstein, and that that you're wrong. It's you've got to be wrong. And what led me down this bunny trail was one of my past lives as a before my author days. Not a past life, but my previous jobs. One of my jobs right out of high school was I was a projectionist at the Mustang Drive-In in St. Petersburg, Florida, or Pinellas Park, Florida. And it was
that is or is not there anymore.
It is not there anymore. It became the Mustang Flea Market before it died completely, and now it is a Costco. It's or Sam's Club.
I miss drive-in movie theaters. I'm just gonna say that. But
yeah, I loved it. Yeah, and I took the job because they were going out under and they needed a projectionist. I wanted to learn how to be a projectionist. I thought it would be this great job. Now, the plus side is to this thing was when it was dying, they said, show whatever you want, because they didn't care. They were making money at the flea market during the day. So they didn't need a project, they didn't need the money from the theater. So I could order whatever movies I wanted. And because drive-ins were dying, this was before digital. This was back in the big reel-to-reel gang. I could order whatever was available.
You just said words that nobody's going to understand what the hell they are.
Exactly.
Reel is.
So what year was this? It was 1988 and 89.
So that's before DVDs, children who are listening.
Before DVDs, VHS was the height, and digital movies were not a thing yet. Laserdisc was still kind of something only rich people had. So I would get these big reel, and the nice thing was the drive-ins were dying. I mean, they're still dying. I mean, there's still a few around, but they, and as Joe Bob Briggs will say, the drive-in will never die. But they're pretty much gone. But the classics are few and far between. They're nostalgia factor now. But I could get these big reels from a catalog, and it was other drive-ins saying, look, I'll trade you for this, and trade you this for this. This is pre-internet. So we're doing this over in this one magazine, and we're all calling each other saying, hey, I've got this movie and I want this one. And so I'd trade to try to make these perfect double features. And there was a guy getting rid of all the James Bond movies. And I'm like, I want to show all the James Bonds I can. A lot of them were no longer available, but it was mostly Roger Moore era stuff at this time. And I was able to grab a hold of the classic Moonraker. And I teamed it up with Spy Who Loved Me, because, hey, I'm going to do Jaws. but not Jaws. Because there was a villain in these movies. One of the henchmen that tried to kill Bond was a guy named Jaws. He was Richard Keel played him, who was probably one of the nicest guys ever. Went on to become a preacher, but he was like 6 foot giant. You know, he was like almost 7 foot tall, hands as big as my head, and but then in the villain he played had a mouth full of teeth, you know, of metal teeth, and that was his trademark. Killing people was biting them like a vampire and ripping their throat out with these metal teeth. And Richard Keel had played a lot of monsters in like the old Kolchak movies in the 70s. He was a backup for Lurch back in the day. He'd done a lot of stuff. Most people remember him from the Twilight Zone episode To Serve Man. He was the alien in that. So with the big head, it's a cookbook.
I love that some of our listening audience is going to be like, oh yeah, I remember that. But a lot of it's going to be like, what in the actual fuck is he talking about?
It's okay. Mark is old. Mark is old.
That's fine. We'll tag things in show notes. Okay, so you're playing Moonraker.
So I played, you know, Spy Who Loved Me. The cool thing is he's a villain in that. And he's like impervious. He's like the Terminator. He can't be killed. He survives all these crazy things. So he's like the one Bond villain henchman that doesn't die.
Okay.
You know, so
it's rare.
So then years later, they're doing Moonraker, which is about a space shuttle being stolen, and they're going to repopulate. You know, they're going to poison the Earth with this deadly orchid from these space shuttles dropping bombs. It was James Bond needed to do Star Wars, so they tried to make a space James Bond. But the cool thing about this movie was Jaws comes back because the bad guy needs to hire somebody to kill James Bond. And the joke is it's Jaws who's back.
The joke is, why hire somebody who failed the first time? But go ahead. Yeah. Bad planning on this bad guy's part. That's not the point of this episode. Continue on.
But anyway, so here's the plot of Moonraker there. But anyway, so Jaws comes back and he's trying to kill Bond, and it's this very elaborate chase scene. And he's got tons of bad guys driving the car, and Jaws is firing guns at him. And of course, the car crashes off of the side of a Swiss mountain and falls into a Swiss chateau, and it's this terrible crash. And then Jaws walks away, just dusts himself off. And then a little bit later, Jaws is trying to kill him again, and they're on a cable car type thing, and he bites the cable. He's using his steel teeth to bite the cable to send the cable car crashing down. But again, Jaws gets outwitted by the hero, and the cable car comes crashing down with him in it, and it smashes into another building, and Jaws is climbing out of the wreckage, again, unharmed because he's Jaws. But what helps him out of the wreckage is this little girl named Dolly, and she's not a little girl, young lady. She has some nice décolletage. She's showing a lot of curves here, gang. A lot of cleavage, but she's this little blonde.
Okay, so she's not a girl. Let's not use the term girl. She is a
young lady, and she's got little pigtails, and she's got cute glasses, and she helps Jaws out of the wreckage.
Okay.
And as she helps him out of the wreckage, he looks at her, and she smiles at him, and she's got braces. And then he smiles back with his metal teeth. And immediately the music from Romeo and Juliet, Tchaikovsky's Romeo and Juliet, comes out.
Crescendos, and they're in love.
And they are in love. So,
okay, yeah, I feel like there's a but though.
All right. So the but is, okay, so they fall in love because she's got braces and he's got the metal teeth. They hold hands and they skip away together. It's adorable. And a little bit later, we're now up on the space station, as Bond had to smuggle himself aboard one of the stolen space shuttles. And up on the space station, Jaws is up there with his new girlfriend, and she's in one of the space suits because she's been brought into the group. But Bond is like realizing, that this guy, he's wanting to he's got all these beautiful people up on the space station with him, right? They are the most beautiful. So it's genetically perfect people. He's wanting to make a new master race on Earth after he poisons the Earth. And so all these people are going to be, the Adam and Eves of the new world.
Okay.
And Bond like talks to the villain, and he goes to the villain. He says, "Hey, we need to, I understand you're doing this, but I assume any like genetic deformities would be weeded out." And he kind of looks over at Dolly, Jaws's new little girlfriend, and he looks at Jaws, who is 7 foot tall craziness, and so Bond turns Jaws into an ally. And Jaws does the Darth Vader Emperor thing. Spoiler alert for a 40-year-old James Bond movie. And he decides to turn the tide and save the day. And at the end, as the space station's blowing up, Bond escapes in the last space shuttle with his love interest, and Jaws and Dolly sit there on the exploding space station with some champagne. And Jaws says his only line in 2 movies, "Here's to us." And they drink the champagne as the space station explodes.
What does this have to do with the Mandela Effect?
Now we're into Mandela Effect. Ready?
I was like, we just recapped James Bond, a movie that's
for
been
20
recapped
minutes.
50 times. Okay.
20 minutes of James Bond, Jaws' story. So because years later, I'm watching James Bond on a streaming service just recently for Christmas. And I'm watching James Bond marathon, because you watch James Bond marathons on Christmas. It's a holiday thing. And
I believe you, but I don't think that's true. But continue on. Yes.
Moonraker comes on, and I'm all excited because, hey, we've got Dolly's braces coming up. Dolly, Jaws crashes. She comes out of the wreckage. He comes out of the wreckage. She smiles at him with her perfect white teeth.
But you said she had braces before.
She does not have braces. And I'm like, what Steven Spielberg editing hell is this, where they took away the guns and put in walkie-talkies for the FBI guys in ET? They've taken away Dolly's braces. And I'm like, I have to write an angry letter to MGM Studios,
because those go well. Yes.
And I'm like, you need to restore this, because I watched it dozens of times as a projectionist, and I always watch that scene. Well, guess what?
What?
She never had braces.
I'm not surprised by that. So is this like a thing everybody thought, like the love interest between them was because she had metal on her mouth and
that was the whole point of their relationship. The big joke.
Obviously not, though. So how is it that you think everybody got that wrong?
That's where I was like, that's when I start digging, figuring out which edition did they edit out her braces. And that's when I discovered this is a Mandela effect. A lot of people remember her with braces, and a lot of people don't.
Wow. That's so interesting, though.
Yep. So I had to dig up the original VHS copy I had, because I'm like, well, this is before they did any special editions. There's no remastering here. She's got perfect teeth.
Well, have you been able to go back and watch a reel-to-reel since you looked at this?
No, that's what I'm trying to get a hold of. I want to find somebody who still has a reel-to-reel master of that to see if we can do it. And I'm still reaching out to people about that. I'm trying to find a collector.
Well, if you have a reel-to-reel, you can reach out to us.
Please reach out to us.
But yeah. I think that's fascinating, though, because, it goes to the whole thing of how much do we insert into what we're looking at? Like, how much does our history or what we want to see feed into what we see, right?
Yep.
Because I don't remember that one. My favorite Bond is actually Octopussy. I'm throwing that out there.
That's a good one too. Hey, that one's fun because you couldn't tell if they were trying to figure out if it was a comedy or a straight action movie, because that's got some of the darkest stuff in any Roger Moore. And then he's dressed as a clown, and then
no, I agree 1,000%. But it's interesting because otherwise, if you take that away, and I know we have to go to a break in a second here, but if you take that part away, you take her braces away, you kind of go, why in the crap did that happen?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. As he falls in love with her because she helped him out of the wreckage, or he falls in love with her because she's, got some, some curves. It's
he could, but I'm talking about the her thing.
Why would she like him?
Him falling in love, if she's a buxom beauty, I get it. It's entirely possible. But the flip side is, why the hell would she be interested in him?
And there's commercials later reenacting that scene where he does a plane commercial where he goes up to a ticket counter to get a flight somewhere, and the girl smiles at him and she's got braces and he smiles back. It's just this crazy European airline commercial. Why would they have done that if that wasn't the original joke?
That's fascinating. But
the big thing is, on the James Bond wiki, that MGM Studios has their list of characters and stuff. They talk about Dolly's braces.
Wow.
And now the actress herself said she never wore braces, but we will get into all this. And so now the theories come out. So we'll do that after the break, though.
Okay, well, we'll be right back then with braces.
Yes. So some shameless commercial plugging. Here we go, gang. Let's buy their stuff.
Buy stuff.
Erie, Appalachia. Gear up for a frightful jaunt into the darkest reaches of the ancient Appalachians. Folks deep within the Appalachian hollers lean close to the campfire to share stories of the inexplicable with hushed awe. Monsters rumbling in the hills, strange lights darting through the pitch black night sky, horrible occurrences almost ineffable in their bizarre tragedy. Tall tales, you might say. Tell that to the Flatwoods monster in Braxton County, West Virginia, or the Goat Man of Louisville. Look into his humanoid eyes and let him know you don't believe. And what of those apparitions in Mammoth Cave's Corpse Rock, or the Satan spawn known as the Jersey Devil? How do you respond when confronted by these mysteries? From the metaphysical energy that swirls near Serpent Mound in Ohio to Point Pleasant's Mothman legacy, Mark Muncy and Carrie Schultz explore the dark history lurking in the shadows of Appalachia. Read by Mark Muncy, author and experts on strange folklore with appearances on shows such as Ancient Aliens, The Curse of Robert the Doll, and many, many more.
Greetings, mortals and others. I'm Dick Terhune, the voice from hell. I work with haunted attractions all over the US, Canada, and Europe to increase audiences and enhance their experience with highly effective commercials, narrations, animatronic character voices, whatever your dark heart desires. Let me help you do more, scare more, profit more. Find out more at Voice from Hell on Facebook and at voicefromhell.com.
Okay, we're back. I just have to mention, because I drove down the rabbit hole a little bit and like a bunny hop. So it says, because the name of the character is Dolly, the girl says apparently there's our amazing producer pointed this out, that there's a lot talking about how she was fitted for braces, but they weren't used in the movie, or they were, but people are saying it's because the sun reflected off of her glasses, which made the illusion of braces. That her being the stereotypical geek girl, which there shouldn't be a stereotypical geek girl, but that's what they were calling it back then, that she automatically would have worn braces, and that they were cut out of the film as a white flash and flashing over her teeth briefly. However, the editing back then wouldn't have done that. I think people don't realize how editing worked back in the day, So it's fascinating, and it's fascinating how much of a debate there is about this one scene, right?
This is probably the one that gets the most fights brought out about, Mandela Effect being legit or not, and because this is the one. This is my hill to die on. I swear that I showed it to my adorable kids, and at one point when we were doing the James Bond marathon, and they recall, as our wonderful producer mentioned on the break, they remembered the braces. So that would have been a home video release probably, but I went back to my original VHS on my VHS player, and no, she didn't have braces. So,
well, it's interesting. I wonder if anybody, I'm sure people have done a study of things that were in movies and then later cut out of movies when it went to a cinematic, when it went on to VHS and things like that. I mean, with streaming and everything, it's not so much, but it used to be this was copied and there's a copy of it. And there's, every now and then a director, George Lucas, would get really excited and redo, and you remember it a certain way.
And that's what I thought had happened.
Isn't it like kind of similar to the Who Shot First?
Yeah. And also, exactly. But also things like, we remember the lines wrong. That's the most famous being, Darth Vader, Luke, I am your father. No, he never says that. No. He says, no, I am your father. And, but it's misquoted as Luke, I am your father. No, he's never said that. It's like Scotty, beam me up. Never said in the entire history of Star Trek. Even with the new stuff, he never says Scotty, beam me up. He's beam me up, but it's never beam me up Scotty, or Scotty beam me up. He never talks to Scotty and tells him to beam him in. So, which is interesting because I'll tell you, as a Trekkie too, I distinctly go, no, he said that. Now, it's, I think it's interesting, and it's interesting that it's not, just one person, but this goes to, such a deeper thing of how memory works and how things work. Like we were, I was talking to somebody about what is that creature that is in is it Flatwood Monster that came out of an alien ship, and everybody remembers it coming out of an alien ship. We're not even going to get into the Flatwood right now, but there's a group of people with this same shared memory of things. And this leads you to go, did this happen? Or was it one of these memory things where, maybe you talked about the braces thing, for instance, with both your amazing kiddos, and did they then supplant that there would be braces because you talked to them about the braces, right? And that's the traditional, this is what people are doing. People are misremembering it. Play it again, Sam was never said in Casablanca. It's these are movies that were from before your time, audience. But some of our audience, but there's actually a magazine out now that from Life that says that is the most favorite movie of all time. Yes. How the fuck do they know that that's the most favorite movie of all time? Like, seriously. Well, that was the one where they interviewed all the filmmakers and had them list their top 100, and then they ranked them. And the thing is, it never was number one on many, but it was always in the top 5. So that's why it and Citizen Kane are way up there, because they're always in the top 5, even though they're not number 1 for a lot of people. But Jaws is on that list. Speaking of not Moonraker Jaws, but real Jaws. And that's another one that's got one of those misquotes, which is we're going to need a bigger boat. It's you're going to need a bigger boat. That's just, we heard it wrong. It's been misquoted so often that, that's why these things come out. But now where the theories get into this is where we have fun with the conspiracy theories, right? Okay. Why these things are happening, why these things are going the way they are. There's a man who was driving around his hometown, going back to visit his favorite place. And he was going to be bringing his wife there soon to show where he grew up. And he goes in and he drives by one of his favorite restaurants. And it's at this wonderful location on the beach that he's like, oh, they opened a new one right on the water. So you can actually go out onto the beach afterwards and do all this wonderful things. So he was thrilled with this. And so he can't wait to bring his wife there. And it's right down the street from where he lived, but then he goes by where he grew up and his parents' house isn't there anymore. It's like, oh, been bulldozed, and there's these big fancy houses there now. This whole area has been rebuilt. And then he goes, but he's like, but wait, my uncle and aunt live next door, and their house is now this big fancy house, and all this other weird stuff's going on. So he goes like, what the heck is, my town has been gentrified and I didn't even know it. My aunt and uncle didn't tell me they've moved. And he goes back to his hotel. Okay. And just crashes for the night, but he's excited to show his wife that she flies in, he picks her up in the airport, They go to sleep. The next morning he gets back and he's going to take her to this wonderful restaurant and show her where his parents grew up. Well, the house is there. And his aunt and uncle are living next door. And the restaurant is down the street, not where he can't find it. He drives like 10 streets, can't find it. Finally pulls up Google Maps, types it in. The nearest one's a mile away. And it's not on the water. It's across from the water. And they've never had a location on the street. He talks to the managers like, I thought did you guys open one up on this beach? And they're like, no, we never had one on that beach. So he's convinced he slipped into an alternate universe for a little bit, or parallel reality.
Multiversing is what we're talking about. Multiverse.
Exactly. And so he was convinced that he had all these memories, and if he had stayed there, he was convinced he might be stuck in that timeline. Now, there are other people who say things like this. And so the theories go that maybe that's the Mandela effect, is we're remembering these parallel universes, also, alternate realities that are merging. So we're getting these timelines. And why are they merging? CERN.
Well, I'm assuming it has to do with Doctor Strange.
Yeah. Strange is the real reason. Although I am a big fan of Brother Voodoo, or Dr. Voodoo.
Yeah.
But
why do they think it's happening?
They think it's the Hadron Collider and the Higgs boson particle.
What the hell is Hadron Collider and the words? What are those things?
Think about the timeline here. All right, so this company called CERN decides they're going to build a machine. They want to discover more about the universe.
Okay.
And we know there's this theory that right after the Big Bang, there was these particles that, to help physics make sense, right? There's this missing particle, this thing that could do things out of nothing. And it became known as the Higgs boson particle because boson was it's too scientific. I'm not going to get into that. Let's listen to a science podcast. Call Neil deGrasse Tyson. He'll tell you all about it.
We'll get him on here and he can explain.
We'll get him on at some point. He can give us the details. But anyway, I am not a scientist. I'm a cryptid author, a folklorist. But anyway, they decide to make this machine, a particle collider that would make big giants. They did like 10 years worked on it, did all the 10 years of excavation, made this big circular thing. And there was no hiding it from the world. And that was but because they were doing all this, the world was like, wait a minute, you're building a machine to remake the Big Bang? What's going to happen? This could destroy the universe. This could cause all kinds of problems. And they're like, but we need to see if this particle exists. And this is the only way we can make it happen. So they turn it on and it works. The machine works.
Okay.
But the world doesn't end. We're all here, right?
Okay.
And they do discover what may be that particle. That's not 100%, but they're pretty sure that it might be. And it's still not 100%, right?
Got it.
Now, people say they did create another universe when that came on, that they did create an alternate timeline when that came on. And that's when all these weird Mandela effects start happening. Guess what? It's in the 90s, the 90s, when all these things, supposedly Mandela's supposed funeral and all these other things were in the late 1999, 2000s, when the collider turned on for the first time. The Moonraker videos were coming out around this time. So
I have a question for you. If we're going down this very interesting yet maybe scientific rabbit hole. Excuse me. Oh my gosh, I just sneezed on the podcast. Maybe not. Our producer.
That's all right. Godzilla. Godzilla, you.
Yeah, I may have just literally caused the butterfly effect. Different podcast. But my question is, do you think, do you feel that there is potentially one or more? Because you see, like now they have all these photos and stuff coming out from many, many moons ago, though, when people look like us or are walking with legitimately like
a cell phone from 1920. Yeah.
And so it begs to wonder, do they collide at the same time? Are they running on the same time, or are there already sort of, the theory of if you make certain decisions, it takes you down a different path? I kind of wonder if there's a whole, like, you intersect and go a different direction with things, because there are definitely, like, the Luke, I'm your father, as somebody who actually saw the original Star Wars in the theater when I was 3 years old. I have a picture of me in my ladybug dress from going to it before anybody knew what the fuck it was. Opening night. I remember Luke, I'm your father from Empire Strikes Back when I went and saw that in the theater as well. Chinese Man Theater, Los Angeles, thank you. But I remember that line for the longest time until somebody was like, that's not the line. But I'm wondering how many of those and what the population that remembers it one way versus the other. And are we continuing to intersect? I just got very, very metaphysical there.
No, and that's 100%. That's the thing with this. You can rabbit hole this. Of course, physicists say, yes, alternate universes exist because this Higgs boson particle does things that shouldn't exist in our universe. They should not exist in our universe. So they have to come from something other, something outside. Even Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about that. He says these things are other. They're from another place. But he doesn't feel like anybody can travel between alternate universes. Most physicists think, no, there's no way that guy traveled to the restaurant in an alternate universe. That's something just weird. Is it alternate timeline? That's another thing. Did somebody make a decision? Did a time traveler go back with his cell phone in 1920 and cause a problem? The other thing is, of course, the other theory, which some scientists are big fans of, and that's the Matrix theory, that we're all in a simulation. And these are the glitches when a software update came through and it didn't work. Because if we're all living in a box and we all get the same updates, hey, everything's great, and nobody knows we're living in the box. But now suddenly, we're all Truman showing this or something, but then.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I remember when The Matrix came out, and I know you did as well.
Yeah.
And I think that movie, in a way, was terrifying, because you go, could that really happen? Especially when Agent Smith explains that they started with the utopia, but we wouldn't accept the programming. Like, it couldn't be just that great. We can't do it all the time, which is a whole other thing, why you can't, like, literally get everything you want and still be a happy human being, right?
Right.
It's interesting to think how much of this is created by how we believe it should be perceived, which goes, somewhat not the alternate universes, but it goes back to it. Interesting when you talk to people who've witnessed events, especially ones that have some sort of trauma to them, what exactly they recall from it happening. Like, there was a serial killer that was they called him the Yorkshire Ripper, right?
Right.
And he went through, and part of the big problem with that investigation was how the eyewitness reports were so messed up that they were giving all these false leads. And that's happened over and over again in crimes that, we see on TV shows, the little person coming in to do the, behind the scenes, blah, blah, blah. They're going to, go, I can ID this person that came in. But in real life, that's not used as much, because
they can't.
People's remembering and then add time into it. So you go back from Moonraker when you originally saw it, which was what year, my friend?
Oh, when I originally saw it, had to be, I was a kid. So it had to be, when it first came out, was it 81, 82, somewhere? Right around Empire Strikes Back time. So.
Okay. So let's just say it's 81, 80, 82. I'm going to Google it while we're sitting here, because that's
because that's what we do.
Proud people on the show do
Yeah.
is, when did rumor? But so then when do you think you saw it at the drive-in?
The drive-in would have been 1989, 1988, 89. That would have been the year.
Okay, so
right around that holiday.
Came out in 79.
79, right. So
10 years later, you watched it and you remembered the braces, right?
Yep. And I'm still seeing them every night as I'm watching it at the drive-in. So
okay. So
And
then
then
let's fast forward to when you remember the first movie night ish with the kiddos. And when was that?
that would have been around, late 99, 2000s, probably. Callie could probably, early 2000s, definitely.
Okay.
Which, no, Callie remembers it. The voice in the other room just said 2010, 2011.
So you've got 10-year jumps, right, that you're talking about here to change this, but your memory is so set, right?
But that would also been after the Hadron Collider turned on.
Well, that's true, but I'm just saying it's interesting because you take Empire Strikes Back. I just looked that up. Like, when did it release, right? Empire Strikes Back released May 21st, 1980.
Yep.
Right? People have been saying, Luke, I'm your father since that movie came out, right? And when did that go to DVD, right?
Yeah.
Or sorry.
VHS would have been like a couple years later because it took forever.
Yeah, no, back then it took 84. It took 4 years.
Yeah, that's people don't realize. I remember Star Wars didn't come out till 84, I think, and Jedi didn't even come out for another year after that. So
yeah, okay, we're not doing Star Wars on the show. I'm just saying
still,
for that many years though, because you're talking about 3 decades that you perceive this movie one way, but it's different. And you're not the only one that perceived it that way. It's like, how much stuff do we insert? And then it gets into how much do we insert based on our background or certain things? Like, is there some degree of, you look at, I'm about to bring a John Hughes movie into this.
Oh, hey, good. Another one.
It's going to make sense. Here we go. We're going to go on a journey. Here we go.
Yeah, let's go.
If you watch 16 Candles, which is one of my favorite, I love John Hughes, a huge fan. There's some stuff in his things that are very dated, but they were 80s movies, but I do enjoy them. So, but John, what is his name? Anthony Michael Hall is the nerd in that, and he has braces. I believe John Cusack and the other gentleman who was in that played the other major nerds with him, getting the girls' panties and stuff like that. Yeah. Another part of the movie that was dated, but I'm getting to a point, I promise, is he came across because he was the nerd. That was the nerd look. You had the big glasses and you had the braces on your teeth.
Right.
A lot of times they had acne and things like that was how they showed a nerdy person. I mean, there was an entire movie series called Revenge of the Nerds. Which
again,
included the stereotypes of what they said nerds were. So I wonder how much that truly played. Like, we expected the character to look like that. So in our minds, they look like that. You got to kind of wonder how much things like that make you think of, think those kind of things,
So, so definitely, gang, please put in the comments, does Dolly have braces?
We will do a poll. Does Dolly have braces?
Does Dolly have braces on EerieAdventure.com? So now we'll go on the Eerie Adventure for this.
Okay,
you ready?
Let's go.
All right.
Ready.
So where do you go to find classic VHS and classic? There's every town has a collector store, and my personal favorite here in Tampa is a place called Viper Video. They have all the little independent releases that you're not going to see streaming anywhere. The local independent horror films and all that. They also carry classic VHSs, and they carry laser discs and all that. So you can find your own Mandela effects. Go back to those despecialized Star Wars editions and find C-3PO Silver Leg, and other things like that. Yes, those are other Mandela effects. People, what? C-3PO had a silver leg? Yes, he did. But we went to a place when we were at GalaxyCon. I took you all to one of my favorite places. It's a chain up north, sadly not down here in Florida way, called Half Price Books. And how much money did you spend there?
I don't want to talk about that. Stop calling me out on our podcast.
This is definitely not a place. Yeah, this is definitely not a place you should be allowed in if you are a book hoarder, video hoarder, or any kind of hoarder with a credit card. You should not be allowed in these stores. They they have truckloads of just collectible stuff like that, and usually at decent prices. And we went to one of those, and I was able to find the original novelization of Moonraker. Guess what's in the novelization?
Braces.
Braces.
I kind of wonder, how much, I guess it's a rabbit hole that, and is it there? Is it not there? It's interesting because I wonder how many James Bond fans that read, because a lot of people used to read the books that went along with the movies and stuff like that. How many people just discussed, like, oh gosh, there was a movie about this, and I don't know what it is off the top of my head because I didn't do the research before I got on here. But one of the things is talking about how much you say something and then it becomes a real thing.
Right.
Like how
may
much
the force
that...
be with you from Obi-Wan, but the only person who ever says that to him in the whole movie is Han Solo.
Exactly. Like there's so many things like that we talk about, and we talk about them. So how much does something that you talk about become real and become a thing, which can get into a whole weird, scared thing? But it's kind of like, you think about, I'm going to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole before our producer tells us that we have to be shut up. But here's my other rabbit hole. John Hughes. But you think about like cults or groups of people that believe something like the end of times is coming. Let's just talk about, the cult, that the Hale-Bopp cult, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Heaven's Gate.
So, Heaven's Gate used a bunch of stuff that was, and there's a ton of great documentaries about the Heaven's Gate and books and stuff like that. So if you want to go down that rabbit hole.
We'll do cults down the line. Yeah.
Yes. But one of the things it talked about, which is interesting, is they, all these people were firmly convinced that this comet coming was the signal that they needed to leave because the world was ending, right? And one of the things that ties back into a little bit of sci-fi on this was Michelle Nichols, who was Uhura on Star Trek's brother, died in that cult thing, right?
Yeah, he was convinced.
But they believe this truly based on events. They had convinced themselves so much of this based on different things that had happened in their interpretation of the things that had happened, to the degree you just go, how much is it the Mandela effect, alternate universes, or how much of it is the ability for human perception to be changed based on our environment?
And again, charisma plays a part. If somebody tells you, hey, this is what happened, then suddenly that's in your head. Oh, this is what happened. That's what we talk about. You were talking about your true crime. That's why witness testimony can be easily swayed and can be easily, written off. And that's why we have so many people. Oh, this man was on death row for 20 years. Oh, because of one guy testified against him. Guess what? Police coerced that guy. And guess what? That was all thrown out. There's.
And they talk about that too, from getting confessions. Like one of the biggest things in, and there's, documentaries on this too, just literally there's shows about getting confessions, because they'll have people in there for so many hours, right? And they, what is the Netflix one, the murder one, where, they
narrows it down.
No, I know, but it's one that just came out, but it's about a gentleman and a younger man who were both convicted of this murder. They ran a junkyard.
Oh, making a murderer.
Making of a murderer, right?
Yeah, where the one kid admits that he admitted to it, but
he was, he had some mental disabilities, and they've proven that, and they had him in a room without his parents and I got to the end of that, and of course it was told from the perspective of the person doing the docuseries, both of them, part 1 and 2. But I got to the end of that as a true crime person going, I have no fucking idea what happened. Like, because I go, this seems a lot like the police built this thing up. They created this, and at the end of it, do you go like, yes, that happened? No, that didn't happen. But I can tell you now, there's an entire group of people who've watched this that have their perception on how that happened and how it went down.
Yep,
Right.
and that's one of the things. One of my favorite filmmakers, Werner Herzog. Of course, I would like to see the baby from The Mandalorian, but he was a film director before that. And he did some amazing documentaries. And he was at a convention of documentarians, and they were all talking about how they have to remove yourself from the situation and don't have an agenda and just document. And he's like, no. He jumped up on the stage like, you're filmmakers. You have to, insert yourself into the documentary. You have to prove your point. That's the whole point. And it basically got booed, by everybody. And he's like, oh, you're a bunch of crybabies. Happy New Year. And he walked away. And
Wow.
we'll have to do a whole thing on Herzog at some point. Just the man got shot 3 times during an interview, and he still continued talking because he's like, it's not a significant bullet. Yeah. How badass is that?
But
Yeah.
Monty Python, that's another one where people remember the scenes completely differently.
Oh yeah. People
You know?
remember skits that were that they don't they thought were Monty Python, but were something else, like they were Benny Hill or something like that. But because it's all late night PBS, we screw them up in our heads and all that. And there's so I think it's a bit of everything. I think it's people misremembering things. I keep thinking,
I want from our audience whether or not they're from an alternate universe.
That's true. Well, the man who emailed me the whole story about the restaurant, man, that's when I talked to him, he was convinced that he went into an alternate timeline. So, and
and there are many stories of that happening, right?
Yeah.
Or things being moved around, and I am not, to say that couldn't have happened. I get it. Science is interesting. Callie just threw us off by saying that her dad added an additional. Their dad added
an additional L to their name in one universe.
But, that's a whole other universe. You can go to the one where the name is correct, but I think to discount what that person perceived, and that's one thing that I've seen in doing the amount of interviews that I because I came, my previous lifetime was doing human resources, and I can't tell you how many interviews I did with people, and the perception was different every single time.
Yeah,
right?
If you talk to 3 different people about the same event, you're going to get 3 different stories.
Yeah, no, totally. But you also, if you talk to them, even if they were the only one at the event, right? And say, for instance, you have video or something that shows that there's one thing about lying, but there's one thing when they're so certain about what happened. Or, you watch a lot of the spooky stuff, which we can, we're going to get into and stuff, but the spooky things on how things happen. And when 2 people were in the same room and had 2 different, walked into the same room and had 2 different ones, like you just go, there may be something too, is there universes butting up against each other and you pass into and out of them, right? Which is creepy as hell to think of, because what if you did get stuck?
Yeah.
What if that guy did get stuck and he didn't have a wife in that other universe?
Yeah, he didn't have a wife, and his parents were gone. That house was destroyed. His parents' house was destroyed, and his aunt and uncle are gone. Maybe he doesn't exist in this universe. It's some crazy stuff. It can definitely mess with your mind.
I was gonna say, does the person that's your person in the other universe come in, or are there 2 of you? Like that gets into a whole entire thing. Like, do you switch places? Meaning, is there somebody in that other universe going,
That's why I have the goatee now, because of I switched universes, and that's why I'm not the nerdy fat kid anymore. Well, anyway, on that note, gang, now that I am Evil Mark from the Mirror Universe, let's oh my gosh, so let's plug our socials. What have you got? You've got another dozen episodes of Drinking with Authors coming.
I have Drinking with Authors. We actually for this year have moved to doing 2 authors a week because we have so many authors, which is fantastic. I love getting drunk with authors. So we have a lot of episodes coming up. I know that we're going to both be at Pensacon. So if anybody's in the panhandle of Florida and would like to come meet us, that would be fantastic. Please feel free to drop by. If you want to come explain to us your Mandela Effect, we would love that.
Yeah, we'd love to hear that.
And then you're going to be at Mad Monster Con.
Yeah, the week right before that. Yeah, in North Carolina. And then, if you follow our website, the Erie Adventure website, will take you to all of our upcoming appearances. And we can also, you can reach out to us with your stories if you have a Mandela Effect, if you have a thing that's happened to you, or that you want to discuss with us. And we talk cryptids, monsters, ghosts, high strangeness, conspiracy theories. But I like to think that conspiracy theories in the modern age are usually just spoilers. Because a lot of them are coming true in my lifetime, which is crazy. I have a follow-up from our last episode, which was on Cocaine Bear.
Oh yeah.
I have an email I received that we brought up Woody Harrelson's dad, Charlie Harrelson, the hitman.
Yes.
Some consider that he might have been the man who actually killed Kennedy.
Really?
Not Lee Harvey Oswald, who was the fall guy. They think either he did Kennedy, he killed Kennedy, or he's the guy who organized it all. So because he was the professional hitman of note at the time. So we'll be delving more into that research as I can, but that was very good. Thank you guys for sending that in. So
what are we talking about next time? Have we decided what we're talking about something next time? What is it?
I think we're gonna just kind of leave this one on a teaser, just there's more to come. So
yes.
And I think we're gonna delve more back into the spooky, because I think it's about time we talk some ghosts.
Oh, I'd love to talk about ghosts, especially if they involve. No, just kidding. I'm not going to say that out loud. No, but I do love being spooked. So that'll be fun. Well, awesome. So guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, keep up with us. We'd love having you and hearing from you. And that's all I have, Mark. Do you have anything else?
That's all I got. We're going to let Destiny Beard play us out again. Thank you again, Destiny, for this amazing theme song. It has been incredible to listen to. And Callie, once again, thank you for your incredible production skills. I cannot wait to hear how this one hits the pipe. And tell your friends, tell everybody, share us. Let's get this thing. Let's build this community. I'd love to hear more stories and and see what else we can come up with. And as always, we'll see you on the other side.
See you then. Bye.